In the words of the great and noted philosopher Alice Cooper, welcome to my nightmare. Of course, it's your nightmare, too. Donald Trump is president. He and his administration are busy looting the economy on behalf of themselves and their fellow wealthy friends, and they are busy decimating the planet and turning it into a blighted hellscape for generations to come, perhaps until the end of all humanity. Unless we can do something to stop them, we are in desperate shape, and one of the avatars of our dark and dismal dystopian future is none other than EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. Now, there are so many questions about Scott Pruitt's personal conduct, his mishandling of federal funds, and of course his absolute servitude to the fossil fuel industry and his determination to misuse his agency to help them despoil our planet, that Scott Pruitt is understandably reluctant to meet with legitimate news outlets or reporters who might ask him questions that would embarrass him, which is basically any kind of question about what Scott Pruitt does. So lest we forget, the extreme right in this country and its corporate allies are very busy not only hijacking our democracy, but hijacking our media as well. We did a segment on this program a while back, a few weeks back, about Sinclair Broadcasting, how they pretend to be local news outlets, but actually serve the far-right and alt-right agenda of the corporation that owns them. So naturally, they are very pro-Trump, and they came together to offer what might generously be described as an interview with Scott Pruitt, using their chief spokesperson, the notably unpopular, according to most metrics, commentator Boris Epshteyn. I want to play you a couple clips of Epshteyn's quote-unquote interview with Scott Pruitt. Now, it was aired on 2 separate nights. I will occasionally perhaps interject comments as Epstein or Pruitt speak, perhaps not, perhaps I can restrain myself. We shall see. But clip number 1, well, I'll tell you why I find it striking after we play it. Let's play the CO2 clip, as I call it.
Absolutely. I mean, we continue to see CO2 reduction. Our economy's growing. I indicated to you in the opening comment about $1 billion in cost savings with respect to regulatory savings at the EPA alone. The entire Trump administration, $8 billion in the first year. Now think about that. The regulatory savings across the full executive branch, $8 billion in savings. At the EPA alone, $1 billion. And we're improving environmental outcomes. So it's demonstrative that you can do what's good for the environment, but also do what's commonsensical on the regulatory side and achieve both a growing economy and positive outcomes for the environment.
See, well, he talks fast. I'll give him that. But so it's over. It's done more quickly, and I'll give him that too. But that said, first of all, the CO2 claim of reduced emissions, any reduced emissions would be due to policies of the previous administration. So we got to discount that. But I'll tell you why I find this especially amusing is because apparently Scott Pruitt would have us believe that he cares about saving money. Now, first of all, $8 billion is nothing compared to the cost that pollution is wreaking on our bodies, on our environment, and on our economy. So that is trivial. But secondly, Scott Pruitt cares about money. See, this is why he won't appear in front of real journalists, because real journalists might ask him, oh, why did the American public pay $3.5 million for your personal security, Mr. Pruitt, during your first year in office? Why did you insist that your government staff drive you around Washington, D.C. to get to the proper hotels that sold the kind of hand lotion that you prefer? Why did you spend more than $58,000 on private, chartered, and military flights? Why did you spend more than $105,000 on first-class flights? And why did you spend $43,000 on a soundproof phone booth that sounds like the cone of silence out of the old Get Smart program? If you remember the cone of silence where Maxwell Smart would get into it with Chief his boss. Well, I guess Scott Pruitt wants a cone of silence. Maybe he wants a cone of silence because he wants nobody to hear about all the calls he's taking from the fossil fuel industry so that he can be sure to do their bidding. But I want you to hear another clip from Scott Pruitt before we go, just to tell you what kind of hard-hitting journalism he was willing to subject himself to. Let's play the second clip.
And I've spent over 6 hours of testimony with Congress answering those questions. We provided documentation. We're doing what we need to do there to get beyond it and to focus on the agenda and still getting things done in the midst of it. I've actually made some of those changes. So I'm trying to learn from this process and make sure that the agency applies different checks and balances in the future, but continue to focus on getting results at the same time.
So you're making some of those changes to make sure
absolutely.
That there's more oversight.
Absolutely, and we should. But that's something that we should endeavor to achieve in the future and now, but also focus on the agenda. And so both are important.
Here's the bottom line. Scott Pruitt is standing strong in his job. He's calling for more accountability at the agency and insisting that controversy is not distracting him from carrying out key parts of President Trump's agenda.
How's that for holding our leadership accountable? Way to go, Boris. Way to hold his feet to the fire. You didn't let him get away with anything. First of all, Scott Pruitt's comments were like cotton candy. There was nothing there, no matter how much he tried to digest them. Now, Boris Epshteyn, of course, followed with this fawning. This is the kind of stuff you see in totalitarian countries from state-controlled media or from the Soviet Union under Pravda. In fact, I don't think Pravda was this bad. This was embarrassingly servile coverage from Sinclair Broadcasting, whose owners support Trump. Not that that's going to be any kind of surprise. This was disseminated to local stations, made to appear as if it was local coverage. It is not only embarrassing, it probably even embarrasses the Koch brothers. And the Koch brothers are the guys who put Scott Pruitt into politics in the first place. They're the ones who funded his run for Attorney General of Oklahoma, where once he was in office, he sued the EPA, the agency he now runs, not once, not twice, but 14 times. And in fact, the fossil fuel industry was later discovered when his emails were published as a result of a Freedom of Information Act disclosure. We later learned that the fossil fuel industry was not only telling Scott Pruitt what to do, it was actually helping to write those lawsuits against the EPA. This is a guy who is literally serving the people who are destroying our planet, who are destroying our earth, destroying our air, destroying our water, and he wants to make sure they have more free reign to do it than ever. See, this is the real corruption of Scott Pruitt and the Republican Party and Donald Trump, not just the trivialities of the cone of silence or whatever, but the fact that they're destroying our planet for generations to come. And you know what? If I was doing that, I guess I'd want my words to be shrouded in a cone of silence too.